the last session is very interesting one. It is CFD in automotive designs. It's a very nice topic. Certainly, I am confident that you will learn a lot out of this session. The presenter is Dr. Sridhar SN. He is Director, School of Engineering, Amity University, Gurugram, NCR. I'll welcome you, sir, on behalf of Saptagiri College of Engineering and CMTI. I welcome you, sir, for this FDP, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, before handing over the session to you, I'll, for the participants' benefit, I'll introduce Dr. Sridhar. He has completed his BE Mechanical from Bangalore University, ME Aerospace from Indian Institute of Science, PhD from Indian Institute of Science. He worked as a professor in BMS College of Engineering, Bangalore, and MS Ramaiah School of Advanced Studies. Then he was principal and director of KS School of Engineering and Management. Now, at present, he is the director of School of Engineering and Technology, Amity University, Gurugram, Haryana, NCR region. So he has got totally 31 years of teaching experience. He has guided 8 research scholars for PhD, and presently he is guiding 4 research scholars. He has written 2 textbooks, 30 journal publications are there to his credit, 27 international conferences. He has presented the papers. He has presented his papers in 20 national conferences. H index is 9, I-10 index is 9. Then citation is 269 in Google Scholar. He has handled the projects worth of 75 lakhs of research and consultancy projects, and he has completed them. He is also involved in corporate training. He has trained the corporators of TVS, Mahindra, Bosch, Infosys, Schindler, and he has given guest lectures, keynote addresses, and training sessions for more than 75 times, targeting various audiences. He is also expert in educational management, educational accreditation, organizing international conferences. He has participated in counseling programs for +2 students in TV shows in several channels, national level channels, and several occasions. He has received Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan National Award for Best Engineering College Principal during 45th ISTE Convention. He has received Excellent Principal in Karnataka 2016 during National Karnataka Education Summit. Then he has also received the award of Vocational Excellence Award in 2014 from Rotary Bangalore. With this brief introduction, I will hand over the session to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I think directly we shall go to the presentation today. I will take about 45 minutes or to 50 minutes. Then we will have discussion also. And as you said, we can actually continue this session for valedictory as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let me start sharing my PPT.
Yes, sir.
Visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning, all of you, and I'm thankful to the organizers of this event and Shripad sir for actually, calling me for delivering this lecture. I'm also happy that we are coming to some sort of, application of whatever you learned so far. And these are actually the project works and also some of the industry works which we did in our various institutions. And therefore, this is more interesting as well. You will see that how do we use commercial CFD softwares for the application of automotive design. I have a few case studies here, which I'm going to take up one by one. So you know that actually the CFD basics you have already learned. And now I have some sort of applications in automotives, basically something like vehicle aerodynamics. So you know that in the aerodynamics, we try to look at what is the drag portion and how the aerodynamic destabilizing forces are acting on a vehicle. That can be actually investigated using CFD. Then we have combustion analysis in the engine, flow analysis in fuel lines, air intake, exhaust muffler, flow analysis in fuel pump, injectors, torque converters, conjugate heat transfer in cylinders, underboard, flow analysis in air conditioning, heat transfer analysis, air conditioning, and so on. One by one, I will take and I will try to make it more simpler. Basically, I will give some physics first, like what we should see before even applying CFD. Then I will also go to the CFD commercial software, how it is being operated, and then I will take you to next level, like what is the outcome and how do we interpret. Basically, please understand when we say CFD, many a time people make fun of it. They call it as colorful fluid dynamics. The reason is very simple. Any problem you solve, and you can actually get the results in terms of colorful plots and colorful vector graphs, colorful animation, etc., and so on. If the physics is lost in it, then actually it is called colorful fluid dynamics rather than the computational fluid dynamics. So let us be more careful on it. First of all, before even applying CFD codes or CFD commercial software, one should understand what is the physics in it. I will take one by one. Now coming to what is called the vehicle aerodynamics. When I say vehicle aerodynamics, whenever a vehicle is moving in air, there are the interaction of the air on the body will create a lot of these things. What are those which we can actually estimate from the estimate through the vehicle aerodynamics? The first one is coefficient of drag on the vehicle. This actually says how much of the force is acting backwards, means it is pushing it backwards, and that particular drag force, when we say coefficient, I'll define coefficient a little later. This is the one we assume that like air is pushing it backwards. The moment actually the vehicle moves forward, that drag coefficient can be determined. The location of aerodynamic centers like center of pressure, center of positive and negative lift force, center of drag force, etc. This is something like all of you will understand. Suppose I say a mass. Suppose I take an object and I say the mass acting at point M called CG, and we assume that is an imaginary point through which actually the mass is acting downwards towards the ground. Similarly, whenever a body is moving in air, you will find that there is some pressure distribution on the body. This pressure distribution, when you take the center point of all of them and then put one resultant force, it will pass through a particular center that is referred as center of pressure. Similarly, there is a lift force. The entire body can be lifted up, like in your vehicle. Most of the aircrafts, basically the lift force is more active. Then we have the center of drag force also. So all this actually may be combined together or maybe separately. What I mean to say, the center of pressure acting on the entire body of the vehicle could be merged with center of positive negative lift force, also could be merged with center of drag force, or there could be small differences. If there are differences, you will find moments. What are those moments? Basically, the aerodynamic moments about the three major axes, the vehicle reaction at different crosswinds, vehicle reaction due to wind gust while passing a bridge, and vehicle reaction while overtaking another vehicle, and many such applications will be happening. See, for example, when I say aerodynamic moment, when your vehicle is going like this, and if the air, the interactions are such a way that it may even topple like this. When it topples, we say that it is pitching, or it may roll. It may roll means to the side. And similarly, probably you would have also seen that suppose there is a bridge there and a vehicle is going on the bridge and suddenly you find some, gusty sound. That gusty sound, sometimes we feel as if the air is blowing. No. The same amount of air is there. It's only the interaction of vehicle movement with the air and with the, the bridge. And that is called the wind gust. Similarly, suppose there is a bigger vehicle, maybe a bus, and it is going at, let me say, 100 kilometers per hour, and you're in a small car and you want to just take over this particular vehicle. When you try to take over, because the bus itself has got some, what is called the air pattern around it, and by the time the car comes nearer to it, because of Venturi action, it could even be sucked in, or it could actually get destabilized. All these things can be actually, will be studied under vehicle aerodynamics. Many a time, the experimentation becomes more difficult because of the cost involved, and also Suppose I say you want to use your wind tunnel, the wind tunnel also you need to make models, and then how actually simulate it is also very complex one. So CFD is one part, a solution which you can simulate these and fine tune it. I will take one of these actually. This was taken as a case study, aerodynamic analysis of road transport vehicle. A case study was made. What are the objectives we had to make comparative study of possible drag reduction by simple modification to existing bus bodies, and to explore the economic viability of such modifications. Is it really required to all this, and how much of fuel can be saved, etc. So I will show you three models which actually we took for study. The first model, what you find is a bluff body, and most of our buses are almost rectangular in shape, may have a small, the curved surfaces, or may also have a sharp surfaces like this. And we have taken one particular model. We have not taken the considered what is called the wheel here, and we have not also considered the effect of the road. These two, if you add up, it will become a little more complicated. So at present, I am assuming that it is simply uh, having without any wheels here, but the wheel well, we call wheel well. Wheel well is a cavity that is considered, because that will have a what is called interaction. Now what we did actually, we made a small curvature to the front edge, similarly to the top and side also, and we wanted to actually compare the aerodynamic performance of the bluff body with respect to the smoothened body. And similarly, we made little more aerodynamic shape in front again by considering the slopes and other things. And this is bus with the aerodynamic design. So these are the three designs which we tried. Let's see one by one, looking at different types of graphs, or the contour graphs. The first one I'm going to show you here is a bluff body. I've considered the bus speed is about 60 km/h, and I have drawn actually the velocity magnitude in kmph in colors. What it shows, you assume that the bus is moving towards, to the left of yours. So this is moving in this direction. You find that the wave which is coming here hits this body, and therefore there it becomes almost zero velocity. On the top, you will find that again, there is a separation of flow is happening. So there is a zero velocity at this point and the top corner somewhere here. Similarly, at the back, there is a lot of negative pressures are happening, means velocities are almost zero. So you find that the velocity is also going through some sort of circling and all that. So like vortices are being generated. What do we understand from the physics of this? The physics of this says that there is actually a stagnation point in the front, and this stagnation point refers to the halting of the air particle onto this, which actually may also give you push. Okay, that is number one. Number two, if you see on the top, there is going to be a separation, flow separation is happening. Once the flow separation happens at the top because of the sharp edge here, there are chances that your total drag or the induced drag may increase. So as the drag increases, and also I could see that drag is also coming through because it has got a sharp corner at the bottom and also at the rear end, and therefore you find a lot of negative pressures, or the velocity zeros, or velocities are circulating in terms of vertices. These are the one which actually create you backward force. Okay, by any chance, I'll just say, if this tipping is very very high, and if this becomes negative pressure, then it's possible that the bus body may be lifted up temporarily, and then again it may drop down to the ground and so on. So this may give you pitching moment. I'll repeat again. On the top surface, the front, if the pressure is so less actually because of high velocity, and that pressure is negative, means less than the atmosphere, this bus body may be lifted up and then pushed backwards. That is what the physics of it. Now let me see the other magnitude, other picture of it. Now this shows basically the static pressure, not the stagnation pressure, static pressure. When you look at the static pressure, as I said earlier, air is coming and hitting in the front, and therefore the static pressure is very, very high. So you find contours of static pressures like this. As I also measured earlier, you see that the static pressure at the top also is very less, and this is because of the sharp corners which you are having. And similarly, there are some negative regions here because of the negative pressures are occurring because the air velocity which comes here has got vortices, and these vortices will create some sort of negative pressures at the center of the eye. Okay, this is the second graph which you saw on the bluff body. I'm showing you the third part of the bluff body as well. These are actually the contoured or the path lines. The path lines are nothing but it's an imaginary line of a particle of air as it flows through the bus, how actually it takes the path and then goes away. You can see that most of these are being sucked backwards. For example, the air coming from the top is being sucked in, the air coming from the sides is also being sucked in, and therefore you find a lot of negative pressure happening here, and that shows like it is completely giving a lot of drag at the back because everything is almost like a rectangular shape. And of course, after some time, this vortices break and you find that some amount of air is actually going away. But what is very, very important for us to observe is at the backside, you find that a lot of clustering of these vortices are happening, and these clusterings are going to give you a lot of drag. This is just at 60 kilometer per hour. And if you assume that the velocity keeps on increasing, then naturally this force is also will be very, very high. Quickly, I've not shown a particular equation. I will tell you the drag equation goes like, D is equal to CD. CD is basically the coefficient of drag multiplied by frontal area A and half rho AV squared, half rho V squared. Half rho V squared, I think it's a dynamic pressure. Rho is the density of air, V is the velocity of vehicle with which it is moving. In other words, I can say the drag force increases as the square of the velocity. I'll repeat, because D is proportional to V squared, it means that the drag force increases with velocity by square of the velocity. So that is the total relationship. That's the reason why, suppose I say there is a wind coming and you can actually, I mean, suppose you spread your hands and then stand for a long time, you feel little small pressure. The moment you try to move, you will feel more and more pressure. The moment actually you try to run, the pressure you feel is very high. Basically, because the velocity square will be your drag force. Now, this is only at 60 kilometer per hour I am showing you. The next one actually I'm showing you that for the small smoothened circle. I mean the surfaces have been smoothened with the corners are slightly smoothened out like this. So if you try to compare this with the bus with the smoothened corner, you find this region is now spread across. Earlier it was concentrated, now it is slightly spread across. I will go to the first picture here. Now this was the first picture. This was highly concentrated and there is a lot of negative pressure on the top. This is the very first diagram which you had on the velocity contours. Now I will show you the velocity contours. It is spread across. Spread across means the intensity will be reduced a bit. And you find that because the top surface is also smoothened out with a corner, you find very less region or a smaller region which is having negative pressure. And similarly on the backside also, which was a longer vertices, now those vertices have become smaller and are concentrated in a small region like this. So these are the small regions along which this is concentrated. So it shows that the moment actually you smoothened out, the velocity profile across the bus body is changing dramatically, and this change may lead to reduction in the drag. Let me see how actually it goes with the pressure variation. Now this is the static pressure. The static pressure, as you see, also it is completely diversified, or it has been spread across in the front end, and there are not much negative pressures at the back, as you can see, not much negative pressures at the other side also. So therefore you find some positive pressures here, which shows that the drag could have been reduced a lot. Now let me see how is the path line. You look at this path line, now it looks as if the path line is almost oriented. Though these are being sucked at the back, but you find that they are being actually moved away, and therefore what you find here is not the intensive negative circulation continuously. All of them couple, I mean all of them will integrate at the back and then they try to go away from it. This is somewhat much better compared to the previous one. But in the previous one, I will show you, this is how it was. This was not actually confined very close to the body, it was away from the body. That means the vertex body is larger. If the vertex body is larger, the total drag which is coming on the body will also be very high. Now coming to the second one, this is the one which is very close to the body, and away from the body it is again streamlined. Now let me take the third one. In the third one, we made a lot of changes. What changes we have made? First change, actually we have given a cut or an inclination in the front, and this inclination makes sure that the air which is coming here will try to go as an attached flow even on the bus body, on the top of the body, and also the center at which actually the velocity is becoming zero will be reduced. That is number one. Number two, there is an undercut here at the tail. Okay, this undercut is given for two reasons. Usually in India, basically the bumpers are very large, and therefore when the bus actually goes up the bumper, this will be coming closer to the ground, and therefore this should not rub. That is one thing. But actually, if your bus is going under very high velocity, give a undercut here, you will find that the vacuum which was created here is reduced to or limited to a very small region, and all the remaining region, because the air is coming from the back also. Earlier, the air was coming from the top and sides, they are mingling and then they are going away. Now we are giving the air from the side also. Therefore, this air actually drives away the negative velocity or the negative the pressure region, because it tries to fill that negative pressure region, and therefore total drag would be reduced. Now let me see another picture, that is basically the overall the static pressure. You see that the static pressure at the back is almost becoming positive now. Earlier it was not this much positive. Of course, in the front you find that there is going to be pressure which is actually hitting in the center. This is there, but because of this circulation, I mean because of this inclination, you find that some amount of air slips over. Okay, let me now look at the vortices. So you see the path lines here. The path lines are so tamed. All of them are very close to the ground now. So they all actually come together. They go to the ground, and at the ground they dissipate. What is the advantage of this? The major advantage of this is because the negative pressure or the total contour size of the vortex becomes lesser and lesser, the drag forces will be very less. We have seen only qualitative representation of how the drag force is reduced. In fact, CFD allows us also to calculate what will be the drag force or the coefficient of drag. I'll show you some graphs now. Now, these are the graphs which I'm showing you for the coefficient of drag. So if you look at the coefficient of drag here, for a bluff body, means without any smooth corners, the CD is around 1.61. CD, higher the CD, higher the drag force. I'll repeat again. D is the drag force, is equal to CD. CD is the coefficient of drag multiplied by half rho AV squared. Half rho AV squared, half is coming from your kinetic energy, and rho comes from that mass, that is the density of the air, and A is the cross section area of the frontal area of the bus body, and V squared is the velocity of the vehicle. So in that, D is equal to, I can say, CD multiplied by V squared. I could say that D goes like CD into V squared. Suppose I say V, I keep constant at 60 km per hour, then the shape of the body actually determines what is the CD value. So therefore, the drag force goes like CD. If the CD is more than 1, definitely your drag force increases by so much. For example, if the CD is equal to, let me say, 1, and if your CD next in cases is equal to 1.6, you can say that the drag force has been increased by 1.6 times. Similarly, on the 0.89 and 0.71. So you see that when the body is smoothened out, you will find that when the smoothened body will have a reduced one, nearly half of that has been reduced here. So 56% reduction as compared to bluff body is happening in case of the bus with the smoothened corner. And you can see that actually when it comes a little further with this, the front aerodynamic shape is given, the CD could be reduced even to 0.71. So you find that the shape change what we are given for this particular body could reduce the total drag force by so much. So you will find that about 56% reduction as compared to the bluff body, and 20% reduction as compared to the body with smoothened corner is achieved. Now, what is the implication of this? Implication of this is if the total drag force reduces, the fuel cost will come down, because now the bus need not actually fight against the drag force. So the drag force is reduced, therefore your fuel efficiency increases. Suppose a bus gives about 5 km a liter of diesel, and suppose you reduce that particular one, it may give 6 km, it may give 8 kilometers, and this much is the savings of the fuel. Savings of the fuel means fuel efficiency increases because of the body. See, it's the same engine and the speed is same, but still we reduce the total amount of fuel consumed just by making the body in a curved shape. This is the reason why you find most of the cars will have completely aerodynamic shape. Earlier, the cars have a sort of, like straight, the front glass. Okay, it's called usually the windscreen. The front windscreen was almost flat. Nowadays, you find that the windscreens are actually, smoothened out. It will have some degrees, about 60 degrees to 45 degrees like that they are giving. This is mainly because you want to see that aerodynamically it is shaped so that total drag force comes down. Now let me see how practical it is to do this for existing buses. For that, we made a small survey with the KSRTC. This is actually very old data, and now the data is actually changed. I have not gone to the new data. This is around, let me say, 8 years old data. It had about 5,000 buses in 51 depots coming under 10 operating division. So you find different types of buses here. The one bus which is actually almost flat, most of them are flat in the front, and a small bus with a what do you call the locals are calling it a speed bus. The speed bus will have slightly small variation in your bus front thing. So there is a lot of possibility for us to give a proper shape so that it will have aerodynamic shape. Now the question is, by doing so, how much we can actually save as a fuel? I just made a small calculation. So you actually the buses of KSRTC run up to a cumulative of 7.5 lakh kilometer age, which takes to 4 to 5 years. Even if you say there's a fuel saving of 5% due to modification is done, it would mean a saving of around 83,000 rupees per bus per year at the rate of rupees 10 per kilometer, which was actually 8 years old data. Okay, totaling about 4.16 crores for the entire fleet. Entire fleet is basically, I'm just looking at total number of buses available in one particular depot. So if this much fuel can be saved, why we should not go for it is a question. But I will actually make it when I did this particular one. We did not suggest this immediately to the KSRTC. We only said that these type of modifications could be done for the buses which are already existing, provided these actually will have running in main roads. I mean in the roads where there is no traffic or where the velocities are more than 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. Basically because the moment actually you run these buses at a low velocities or low speeds, something like in the city buses, hardly they will go beyond 30 kilometer per hour or 40 kilometer per hour. The drag force will not be that much. So when the drag force is not that much, the fuel what you are going to save through aerodynamic shaping will be minimum. Instead of that, if you try to reduce the braking, several brakings which happens in the city, you could actually save the lot of fuel. So this is not actually recommended for city buses, but this is recommended for only the buses which will be running on long flights, maybe going from one place to another place like Mysore to Bangalore and so on. In such cases only these are I think all of you understood now how actually we took a physical problem, did the modeling through CFD, and that CFD modeling, how we actually arrived at the physics of the results. This is very important. The moment actually you get results, start thinking about the physics of it and apply it. Now, this is the portion at the end of the class. I think this is going to be much more valid for you to understand. You learned all the theory of it. How do we apply using commercial software, or you can write your own code, but how do we write the physics for it? How do you derive the physics out of it is very important. This is one case study. I will take up the second case study. This is a performance prediction of study of combustion behavior in a 4-cylinder 4-stroke SI engine. The students and faculty from mechanical engineering will understand this much better, but I'll try to make it very simple. Now the tools we used, basically the CAD tool is Unigraphics, and there are two softwares. One is called Wave software, another is called Ricardo Vectis software. Both are actually a part of some sort of simulation. Both your simulation in terms of they use the CFD simulation as well, and also some part of modeling, mathematical modeling. This is called block modeling. What are these things and how do they operate? In this I will tell you a little later. Look here, basically what we are trying to do, we are modeling the engine. This is a 4-cylinder engine. This is a 4-cylinder engine. We are modeling the engine with some physical governing equations. Those models are actually serially coupled to some of those components. See, for example, in the front, you have the air intake. I write an equation for the air intake, a modeling for the air intake to say that what is the resistance, the forces or the resistance of air, resistance for the air to flow through this. That's a mathematical model. Then it goes to a common junction, and there is a fuel injector, and then it goes to muffler. This is called basically the ducts, and through the ducts, actually, the fuel and air will be going into the manifolds, and through the manifolds, it gets into the cylinder, it gets burnt. After it is burnt, the power is delivered in the cylinder, and then it comes out here to the outside, the exhaust gas muffler, and through the muffler, actually, it goes to the junction and then comes out. This is completely a mathematical modeling. Where is the CFD here? At present, CFD is not applied here. It's only mathematical modeling telling that if this is the type of the air intake duct, you are getting so much of resistance. Suppose you inject the fuel, this is how the fuel goes, etc. and so on. This is completely mathematical modeling, and this is usually done in the wave. What it actually does basically is, in the wave gives us the relative motion of these cylinders, the pistons in the cylinder, so I can actually find out how the velocity varies in all the ducts with respect to the crank motion. So that is the reason why we do the wave thing. And through the wave, actually it gives you, if you give the parameters of the cylinder, like this is the cylinder diameter, and this is the total volume, and it runs at so and so RPM, you will find an estimation of brake power versus engine speed. All the engines, IC engine, will have a typical curve. It goes to peak at particular velocity or particular speed of the engine, and then it drops down. And the similar thing has been actually, shown here also. So it exactly shows the same thing. And remember, we have not done any experiment. Mechanical experiments are not done, but still we are getting this type of smooth curve. And this curve is very important for us to go a little further. What is that to go a little further? What we did now, this actually is a cylinder volume with the exhaust valve and intake valve. What we did actually, that cylinder, inside the cylinder, we scanned using laser spectrum, the dimension scanning meters, and that actually gives you the total area. That area is smoothened out using our graphics, and now you find that this is the volume of the flow. This volume actually has got both air and petrol together, and therefore as the piston actually moves from the bottom to the top, you will find there's a reduction in the volume here, because there is a compression, then there is going to be expansion. So during compression, this entire volume is going to change. I think now we should understand what is the complexity we have in CFD. Now the CFD cannot be actually solved by keeping a fixed mesh. The mesh itself has to be killed. As the piston moves upwards, there are no volumes left out at the bottom. So whatever the fluid was there in the lower mesh should get into the upper mesh, and the lower mesh should be deleted completely. Now this is the one actually which will be done by the Vectis easily. There are many other packages available, but Recordo Vectis actually gives you very good advantage. You just move the piston, you simulate the piston movement inside the cylinder, and inside the cylinder, the fluid volume also changes automatically, and it readjusts the grid size and the total number of grids, etc., according to the movement of the piston. So what I have shown here is a wire mesh at the other end. So this is a wire mesh of it. And now from this, what do I get? I get actually what is called the combustion progress when the spark is given at 350 degrees. You find the very first one here. So you should see in this direction. This is the first, second, third, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like that. So initially, whenever the spark is given, this is actually as if you are seeing inside the cylinder from the top. From the top, you are seeing the cylinder and you are given the spark. Once you give the spark, there is an initiation of combustion here. Then it starts spreading across. So you will find that after some time, as the crank actually moves slightly towards the top dead center, it is going to spread. And it may spread only, to almost like 3/4 or more than the 3/4 after some crank rotation. And now the crank actually starts moving downwards. As it starts moving downwards, there is a small pressure drop. Therefore, the combustion which was actually going up, we will try to reduce it, but still actually, combustion try to spread across. And when the combustion is complete, almost in the last one, the piston would have completely expanded or taken the power. Now, this actually shows how exactly the combustion is happening inside this cylinder, and this is completely the CFD component of the Recordo Vectis. This CFD now, what are the equations may be there in the CFD? One, the mass conservation equation will be there, momentum equation will be there. There is an energy equation. Along with energy equation, we have also put the kinetics of chemistry, that is combustion kinetics. The combustion kinetics have been put into the have been plugged into the CFD equations, and therefore, suppose I say that you give the fuel and air molecule in certain quantity, mix it up, and give a spark. The spark is initiated by giving a sort of high energy concentration with a tip, and once it increases, then you will find that automatically the combustion has been initiated. So it's a fantastic representation as how a combustion actually going through. Let me also give you another point adjacent to this. Earlier, people have done these types of experiments by putting a quartz window on the top. Quartz window, because quartz can take the pressure, and they have passed the light across the cylinder, laser light, and they have observed how exactly this combustion is happening. Almost similar things have been obtained, and sometimes we can even exactly show whatever you observe in the practical cases can be simulated on this. Then what is the physics of it and what you do with it? We will show you that. This is basically the crank angle versus the pressure inside the cylinder. Usually we make such a way that the peak pressure comes once the piston has crossed that 360 degree, then the peak pressure comes in. Now suppose I say if the spark, we made the spark to come at 330 degree, so it has come slightly away. This is actually required. We should not be always on the top exactly, otherwise it may even fire backwards. Now let us see if I advance the spark, what will happen to that. So if when I advance the spark, I will come to that. Now when I advance the spark here from 330 degrees to 320, 325, etc., you will find that the pressure inside the cylinder keeps on increasing, and after one point, actually there is a pressure fluctuation inside the cylinder, which is called a knock. The knocking should never be allowed inside a cylinder, because knocking represents some sort of pressure waves which are actually oscillating violently, and the entire cylinder and piston also can break down. So that's the reason why the knocking should not happen. So it shows that if you try to advance the crank angle from one end to another end, away from the piston head, I mean away from the center of your the 360 degrees, then you are going to get a different type of pressure variations. In fact, if the pressure variation is very low, it is very much lost, because the combustion is not complete. You are simply letting out the exhaust gases. If the pressure is at the peak, it is always better. But don't increase it to such an extent it goes to knock. Now this CFD has given me an idea like what should be the the spark angle for having an optimum pressure inside the cylinder. Now this can be actually taken directly to the experiment and make sure at that particular speed of the vehicle, the spark plug actually initiates at that particular crank angle. I think it is very clear for all of you. This type is a very important thing. Also, the other curves which you get here is a torque and power curve. I think any one of you actually, please, after this, you please try to get some catalogs of any cars or something. Mostly the cars. I think you are more passionate about cars. It will give you high torque at particular RPM and high power at another RPM. They don't actually merge together. You will find that the high torque may be around 2,500 here, but the power is less there. On the other hand, the power is high at about 5,000 RPM, but the torque would have come down. This is a typical curve for any IC engine, usually which is mounted onto vehicle or even stationary engines also. What do you understand from this? Actually, if the variation between these two is larger, between the torque and power, then actually it has the effect on number of gears you require for changing the gears or for the gearboxes. I leave it to you to imagine whether it comes closer, do you require more number of gears, or it is spread across, you require more number of gears. That I leave it to you. Please explore yourself. But you can always see that any car catalog will always give you a torque at a lower RPM, higher torque at lower RPM, and higher power at a other RPM. What is the relation between the torque and power? You know that is easily T into omega is the power. Okay, now this thing also can be put into here to see that how exactly the torque and powers are varying. So what is the total outcome which we did in this second experiment? In the second experiment, I used a wave. Using wave, actually, I found out the physical parameters like what is the velocity inside, etc. Plugged into Vectis. The Vectis actually did the calculations of CFD along with the combustion kinetics, and therefore I am getting actually combustion performance of this, and I could find out when the knocking occurs. So therefore, this result is going to be very helpful in fine-tuning our spark plug firing order. Okay. Okay. Now the next point actually is we wanted to see how exactly it is happening inside. So we also have drawn the velocity contours. So these are the velocity contours in the knock. How exactly the knock, I said earlier, there is going to be severe oscillations of pressure waves inside. That can be seen with this type of thing when you take momentary graphs. These are quite interesting. Now this is what I said about the conclusion. Now another one, this is a very important parameter that usually we see. Studies on the airflow behavior in an intake manifold in a multi-cylinder SI engine. I will try to explain you what do you mean by, first of all, manifold, and what do you mean by multi-cylinder SI engine. SI engine is a spark ignition engine. What is a manifold? Manifold is nothing but, see, suppose I say in an engine you have got 4 cylinders. All these 4 cylinders are connected by a duct to a common passage, and that common passage is called manifold. The air has to enter through the manifold and then to the ducts and then to the cylinders. That is called manifold, okay? And if the injection is happening, many a time the injections will happen inside the manifold, or it could be happening in the duct also. Now, what are the tools which we used here? For the graphics, we used CATIA V5 and R11, and analysis we used again Ricardo wave, Vectis, and also Fluent coupled to that with also Fluent. Ricardo wave actually gives me the velocity variations in it's a mathematical model. Vectis gives me some part of the CFD calculations. Fluent is coupled with that to find out whatever I require. Okay. Now I'll show you this. This is the one which you can actually start imagining a duct with the manifold. This is the manifold, and these are the ducts which are connected to the cylinders. You assume that this is connected to cylinder 1, and this is connected to cylinder 2, this is connected to cylinder 3, this is connected to cylinder 4. And this is the intake manifold. This is actually coupled or will be fixed to the what you call the air filter. So through the air filter, it gets in and then goes into these things. So this is what you find from the mesh model of the intake manifold with the runners. Okay. Now what we did, actually we did a modeling, and this modeling is little complicated. We put all the components of engine, including intake manifold, the ducts, etc., and so on. So these are the junctions which you find. This is the 4-cylinder block again. Just a minute. Just a minute. I will come back again. Just 1 minute.
Sir? Hello?
Sir, I'm in a webinar. If you don't mind, can I call you back? I'm sorry, there was a call there, so I had to take it immediately. I'm sorry for it. I will go back again for the presentation. I'm very sorry. That was an important call, so I had to take. Now, this is actually called a wave model, and through the wave model, we try to find out how exactly the velocities are varying across. Now, you find that these velocities are varying within those manifolds or the runners or the ducts which I mentioned, and those are varying like this: runner 1, runner 2, runner 3, runner 4. Okay. Now these are running something like this, and you find the velocity actually keeps varying with these types of curves. You may be thinking that what is this? There are so many curves which are found here. What you find in these runners, basically there is a fluctuation of air inside, because when the piston moves to the top dead center and bottom dead center, there is going to be compression, expansion, and so on. Therefore, in the duct which is connected to that also, there is a fluctuation of velocities of air. So that is what you find in this. Okay. Now what we did, we just took a cross section of this duct along with the entry to the the runners or the ducts. So this is basically the manifold. One cross section we have taken. We have seen that if there is a constant the pressure is applied to any one, suction is applied to any one of the runner, how exactly this is going to change. So the velocity variations are found at different the blocking of many of these and then opening any one of the runner. This actually simulates the inlet valve and the exhaust valve which are actually blocked and opened up. So that is what we try to find from this. This actually shows how exactly every valve, whether every valve is getting uniform the fuel, etc., or not. Okay. Now this is what we find here. At 435 crank angle, you find different crank angles here. At different crank angles, you find cylinder 1 is running, or cylinder 1 intake valve is open. then cylinder 2 intake valve is open, cylinder 3 intake valve is open, and cylinder 4 intake valve is open whenever in one revolution of the crank. Because there are 4 cylinders, we are making such a way. Now you see here, when actually the cylinder number 1 is open, or the runner 1 is open here, so you find the runner 1 is open, and when the runner 1 is open, the velocities with which you find here is large, and all other regions you find velocities are low. Velocities are low means this is closed and therefore air is not flowing. Now in the next cycle, what happens? I'm telling cycle, not revolution. The inlet valve is closed here for the cylinder 1, but inlet valve of the second runner will be open. So when the inlet valve of this cylinder is open, you will find that it is actually flowing through something like this. And then you will go to 3 and 4 and something like this. So, but actually when you see the difference in colors, it shows that the runner 1 is actually getting very good, what is called the flow compared to the other one. Okay, this actually says that the flow rate to each cylinder is something different. The flow rates are different in each one of them. Similarly, when it goes to third cylinder, you will find in the third cylinder, the velocities are much lesser compared to that in the runner 1. When the runner 1 cylinder is open, it is something like this. When runner number 2 is like this, when runner number 3 is like this. So these are different in different ways actually. So then it goes to runner 4. So the runner 4, you will find that again the velocities are completely different. What it actually says is, for this type of intake manifold and duct design, some of the cylinders will get better air passages or better air amount compared to some of the other cylinders. What is a repercussion of that? Repercussion of that is, if more air goes in, means more mixture will go in. That means that particular cylinder will be producing more power compared to other cylinder which will be supplied with lesser amount of air. That means all the cylinders which are supposed to produce same power will not be now producing same power. They'll be producing a different powers, and because of that your crank may be overloaded because there will be an imbalance and you are not harnessing the entire power of the proper engine entire thing. See, for example, a particular engine says that it gives you about 70 HP or 110 HP or 120 HP. It is a total power from all the cylinders. If one cylinder takes more than 1/4 of it, that means that is overloaded. The other ones are not loaded. So therefore there is an imbalance throughout. So this is what we learned from this particular industrial applications, that whenever you have this type of ducting system which is not properly designed, you find that the cylinders are not properly supplied with equal amount of air. That is one thing which we find here. Okay, these are the conclusions. Now, if you ask me, like, did we suggest something change in it? Yes, we did, but that project which I am not showing here, it is in the industry now. What we made is actually we made the change in the angle, approach angle of these ducts. And when we made that approach angle for these ducts, each duct should be actually loaded equally. That is what we did in the next project and then did it. Now the question is, how did we create this geometry? Anybody can ask this question. What we did actually, we bought this from one of the second market, the entire manifold with the runners. These are available. We call it Gujri. From the Gujri we got it. We cut open all the sections. After cutting open, we inserted that, we measured it using our laser scan meter, and then we got roughly what is the size of it. Then we will put it into the graphics and then we will clean it up. Once you clean it up, it becomes a complete solid, liquid volume space. And this liquid volume space or the air space can be used for computations later. These are all the work involved actually. This is how we should actually move towards practical cases. Now, some of the conclusions, I'll be sharing this little later, so not very important. There is one more thing. I think torque converter I will not take. It's very, very complex. I will take up another one. This is conjugate heat transfer characteristics of a twin cylinder. And I will show you first of all what is a twin cylinder engine. How does it look like? This is how the twin cylinder looks like. There are two cylinder engine and this is the engine block. In the engine block, there is something shown here with small colors. These are nothing but the passage for the coolant to pass through. Sometimes we say the coolant water, and this coolant water passages are shown here. This is actually one of the two-cylinder engine, which we actually bought again from the old market, and then we cut it open. Even the passages have been designed, I mean, have been scanned actually. That is why we cut it open. And what we are trying to do is, suppose whenever there is a combustion happening inside, how the heat actually will be transferred to the block, and from the block into these coolant, and the coolant absorbs this heat and then it goes to radiator. In the radiator, it gives out the heat to the atmosphere and then it comes back again. This is mainly because you have a very high heat which is being produced inside the cylinder, and therefore you need to give up or take out this particular amount of waste heat and should be rejected to what is called the atmosphere. To do that, we have this type of circulation. There will be usually a pump. The pump will circulate this coolant across. Whenever the engine is on, the pump will also be on. So that keeps actually circulating like this. Is it okay? That keeps circulating like this, and then it goes across like this. And this is the solid domain which you have. Now what we do here, I will show you. Now this is the entire fluid volume which we extracted. From the cylinder, I just removed all the cylinder material. I took only the fluid volumes here. All the fluid volumes are only taken for these the fluid passages. I'm not worried about cylinder, but I will apply boundary conditions here. When I apply boundary condition in terms of what is the maximum temperature coming through, that is sufficient for us to understand how the heat is being absorbed. So now what you find here, the spin cylinder, only the fluid volume is taken. This is the fluid volume which we have extracted from that particular diagram. Now, when you go closer to that, these are the type of elements which we use. These are the passages, the water passages through which actually the water is going through that, and this is what you find here. Okay. And next, actually, we did conjugate heat transfer analysis. What is conjugate heat transfer analysis? Is nothing but there is conduction and convection which are coupled together. See, for example, inside the cylinder, there is a hot cylinder is there. So this hot cylinder will be actually giving heat to the cylinder surface through convection as well as radiation, and then at the surface again it conducts. As it conducts, it goes to the liquid. Now the liquid will have convection again. So basically conduction and convection together is usually called conjugate heat transfer. Now this process actually is called conjugate heat transfer. Now what we did actually, we cut the the sections of the cylinder at different places. So as you can see here, this particular has been shown with different sections. Like I can take a section here at 1/4, half, 2/4, and so on. So this is how it goes. Now this is actually we did, and when we do the inlet velocity only without applying any heat, what is happening to the velocity ranges there? This is what we see. Because it is completely molded or casted, and we could not actually control, or nobody can control the velocity of water with which actually it goes in. Basically, it takes the least resistance passage. The liquid or the water inside this coolant passage will take the least resistance passage. So you find different velocities going through that. Now what we will do after observing this, we will apply the heat to the cylinder wall. If I know that cylinder wall temperature, that I'm going to apply it as a boundary condition here, and now I will watch how exactly this heat is being transported through the liquid, and this is what happens here. So you find that inside temperature is very, very high. It's around 4,482 Kelvin. Okay. And that particular temperature outside is very, very low temperature, because it could be almost like 100 degrees centigrade or less than 100 degrees centigrade, because it's anyway the coolant water boils at 100. So at the most it could be 80 degrees centigrade or 90 degrees centigrade atmospheric pressure. So you find that there is a lot of thermal gradient between these two. What is this thermal gradient? The thermal gradient is very high temperature inside and very low temperature on the other side of it. This is what you find. Okay. Now I'll show you this particular, the temperature gradients, how the things are going. This is the wall. At the wall, you have got 448 Kelvin. At the end, you are going to have 369 Kelvin. Now, this 369 Kelvin is referring to the wall on the other side. And in between, it is even lower. That is 325, etc. This is where that air passage, water passage is flowing through. So this study actually gives us an idea how exactly we are carrying the heat produced inside the cylinder through these coolants, and how the outside cylinder is kept almost at a temperature not very high than atmospheric temperature. When the engine is started, usually the heavy cast iron black also gets heated up. If your cooling is much better, the temperature of that should not go beyond 100 degrees centigrade or beyond even 70, 80 degrees centigrade. That is taken care by your cylinder. The complexity of this particular calculation is understanding what is a passage, number one. And once you actually cut it open and look at what is the flow rate inside, etc., then you will be seeing the other side of it, something like this. So this is how it goes across. Okay. Now those variations are shown here with flow velocities and etc. and so on. So this is what I wanted to make it. So from the cold flow analysis, the fluid behavior inside the IC engine block is actually seen and conjugate heat transfer analysis is revealed. Now what I do, because time is very short here, I will go through some of the interesting case studies and then I will leave it open for, it's almost becoming 12. I think you have your the other session also, concluding session. So I'll be just taking some of the other important things. This actually, I'll just explain what is this. This is basically the car passage inside the passenger, where the passenger and the driver is sitting. We are trying to find out how actually the entire car is getting cooled because of the air passages and how these air passages affect. Now, this is the entire, the liquid space or the volume space which we are going to consider. And this is the inside part of it. And we also considered, suppose I say there's a sun on the top or the sun in the front or sun in the back, there's a radiation heat which is coming in. Now, these are the dashboards. At the dashboard, this is where the driver and the co-passenger sit here and the rear end passenger sit here. There is a passage for air, exhaust in this direction. So you can find these things over here. So that is what you find. Now I'll show you some of the results directly without even telling. This is the sun actually when the sun is on the top, because the glass at the rear and the glass in the front are inclined, you find the radiation heats which are entering in. So you find some places where it is getting heated up. Now what we do, we take actually the flow rates. Now without passengers, we try to give the cold air and then try to see how this cold air actually circulates and then what is the temperature inside. And similarly, when the passengers are there, how this actually circulates inside this particular passage, and how this the distribution of cold air is done, and how the heat is getting added up because of the body of this. And similarly, the temperature of sun, everything is taken care. Next, what we do, we change the angle of that the incident angle. So you can see here, see for example, when there is no passenger, the maximum heat, whatever is coming here, almost at the front end of the glass, and this is mainly because it gets accumulated here. Number one, number two, there is a sun rays which is coming here. On the other hand, the moment actually a driver sits here, passenger sits, the temperature slightly increases. Why the temperature increases? There are two reasons. One is actually there is a continuous heat input from the passengers into the system. Therefore, the heat has to increase. Number one, and number two, because of the presence of this, the accumulation of air on the top actually gets more accumulated, and because of that also you will find this type of the heat getting increased. And similarly, we try to find out if the AC vent is at 15 degree, what happens, and if AC vent is at 30 degrees, what happens. So when it is 15 degrees, you find that everything is going good. You have only high temperature somewhere in the corner, whereas in this case, you find that the temperatures are very high far away from this. So this is what happens usually at the other end. Okay. Now this is the conclusion. There are other things which I will not be taking much. What I will do is I will actually go back here and I would like to take some questions from you. I can actually unshare this if there are no questions on the slide itself. Otherwise, I'll unshare and then I'll come back and then ask you. Listen to you. Any questions, please? I think you can ask the question. Or somebody is actually monitoring. Please monitor
that. Sir, thank you for a wonderful session, sir.
Yes.
Now there is an instruction to participants. If you have got any doubts on these slides, you can ask the questions, because otherwise he will unmute. He will come out of the slides. Any
if
questions?
there are no questions, I can unshare. Otherwise, I will.
Yeah. That's what. I hope you can unshare, sir. If they have any questions, you can send that through chat box. I will share it with Professor.
Okay. Thank you so much. Ramakrishna sir, thank you so much for inviting me.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. I'm so happy to see you because I was seeing in Amethi website and all about your activities. I'm proud of you because going so such a far and being there, we were very happy for that. I was talking to Dr. Makande about that only, and we are very happy for accepting our invitation and giving a keynote address and being with us as a chief guest in the valedictory session. And we are very happy that even though in spite of your busy schedule, you are with us, and we are so happy. And the participants are, I think they have taken a lot of knowledge about the subject, and we welcome you once again for this valedictory session. And I also thank the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Dr. Madhav Swami and his team, and Department of Dr. Markandeya, Department of Mathematics and his team. And I also am very thankful to Dr. Manjunath, head of the Department of Civil Engineering and his team for organizing this 5-day FTP program. And it was a successful. More than 200 students have participated, and they've taken a lot of inputs about recent trends in fluid mechanics. So with this, I congratulate them for this successful moment. And sir, once again, I am very much thankful and I welcome you for this valedictory session. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, I'm Dr. Shripad. I'll brief about these 5 days FDP initially. Then I'll invite Sridhar sir again for address by chief guest. Then there will be vote of thanks. This is the flow of the valedictory function. Now I am going to share a few thoughts about FDP. Now, actually, what has happened was it was like I was thinking of conducting one small program just for 1 or 2 days, inviting 1 or 2 lecturers. So we were sitting across the table and we were discussing mechanical HOD, Dr. Madhav Swami, and civil HOD, Dr. Manjunath. They gave an idea, why don't we together conduct one 5 days FDP program. Then it was just a week old brainchild, sir. Just 1 week back, we thought of conducting FDP, and we made it a huge success. Within 3-4 days of time, we could able to have 20 resource persons and around 200 participants. It is now it is a new dimension of FDP, I can say, because FDP usually it will be nationwide, like faculty or participants from India will join usually for FDP. But in this case, in our case, faculty from Oman have joined, faculty from US have joined as participants. And we have got representation of resource persons from 5 different countries like USA, then Chile, then Jamaica, then Malaysia. So we have got representation of FDP, representation of resource persons from 5 different countries. So I can say in a way it is an FDP with international blend, I can say, or I can give a new name to it as international FDP. Usually we hear about international conferences. Now we have set a trend of international FDPs, because even the participants are also from 3 different countries. So for this reason only, see, I am now sharing the list of programs which we have. Yeah, yes. Yeah. Think visible, no? So it started with even we requested CMTI to be our associates. So even they have agreed immediately. So now Department of Civil Engineering, Department of Mechanical Engineering, Department of Mathematics, in association with CMTI, we conducted the FDP. So it started from November 17 with the inaugural session. The chief guest of the inaugural session was Dr. Naga Hanumaya. He is the director of CMTI. Then the same day, it started with keynote address of Pradeep G. Sideshwar on two-frequency gravity modulations, modulation effects on Rayleigh-Bénard convection. Then followed by Dr. Sadashiva Gowda, principal of Vidyavardhaka College of Engineering, Mysuru, on discretization of many things. He considered Navier-Stokes equation. He considered continuity equation also. So he discussed about discretization. Then Dr. Amit Mahajan from NIT Delhi discussed on study of stability of fluids by energy method. Then Om P. Sutara from MNIT Jaipur discussed on the chaotic behavior of atmospheric convection. The day 2 was it was on chaotics only. So Dr. Kanchana from University of Tarapacá, Chile, presented chaotic hydrodynamics. Dr. Annamma Abraham from BMSIT and Management, Bengaluru, talked on ferrofluids and its applications. Dr. Buddhi Sapkota from Tribhuvan University, Nepal, discussed on numerical simulation of indoor containment of distribution of naturally ventilated kitchen. It was a nice lecture. Dr. Narendra Kumar from Jyoti Institute of Technology, Bangalore, gave an introduction, brief introduction of CFD. Dr. Ram Narsimha K, principal of KSSEM Bangalore, talked on general aspects of CFD. It was a very nice lecture. It was received well by students also. Dr. Dharmendra Tripathi of NIT Uttarakhand gave a talk on electro-osmotic flow with bimicrofluids and its applications. Dr. Shankar M from Presidency University, Bangalore, talked about finite difference methods for heat transfer problems. Dr. Manjunath from BNMIT Bangalore talked about mathematical modeling of dispersion. Dr. Mahesha Narayana of University of West Indies, Jamaica, talked about simple Taylor series solution. I think most of the faculty know about Taylor series solution of differential equations. So he used that simple technique to solve boundary eigenvalue problems arising in the fluid flow. Dr. Lakshmi M from University Tarapacá, Chile, talked about natural convection of water. Meenakshi Nerolu today morning, it was midnight for her. Even then, she said she will present live. I wanted to relay her lecture in her absence, but she wanted to go live. So it was midnight for her. Even then, she gave. Dr. Meenakshi Nerolu from Howard University, USA, talked about enhanced heat transfer in liquids. Dr. Pranesh from Christ University, Bangalore, talked about triple diffusive convection with gravity modulation. And last but not the least, it was very nice topic and very nice lecture from Dr. Sridhar S.N., Amity University, Gurugram. So he talked about application of CFD in automotive design. So 17 lectures we could able to arrange, but the thing is, see, we were having many more lectures. Actually, I could not able to accommodate because if I give lesser time to the speakers, it is injustice done to them. I was having another 5 to 6 faculty on the pipeline, but I could not. We could not able to give them the slots. Certainly, we will arrange a similar kind of thing in the next in coming days. Certainly, we want to go for offline when the pandemic comes to an end, definitely we'll go for offline, and we'll certainly invite all the resource persons, and we will make that as a mega event. So with this, some few remarks about our FDP, I'll hand over the session to Sridhar for his chief valedictory talk.
Thank you, sir. After this delivery of the last event, I want to just give a small, overall look at. It's really great that you had speakers, even international speakers are there. It's very, very difficult. I think the COVID pandemic has taught a lot of good lessons to us. Earlier, if you wanted to organize this type of thing, probably you would have spent lakhs of rupees together. Now these type of things have come through where actually people are associating even internationally, and it is very good that you did it. And first of all, I should congratulate all the organizers here, from the principal to the Shripad sir and everyone who has worked for it. And of course, the speakers also have given a lot of good input to this particular one. But I just want to say something. If anybody wants to learn CFD, my first suggestion is please learn physics and maths together. It's very, very important. Many a time, the mathematics people who are working on the CFD will not like much of the physics. And similarly, the people who are working from physics and engineering don't like mathematics. But these two, if you are not mixing together, I think there will be no meaning in it. And usually, whenever the mathematicians take up the CFD problems, they try to look at the solution methodology. They try to add up some modules to it. They come out with some innovative method of solving difficult equations, etc., and so on. On the other hand, the application-oriented things will come where mechanical engineers, civil engineers, and similarly some of the physics teachers, they try to use these modules and then try to solve the real problem. And if I say that what is the the future for this particular type of topic, and especially some students want to take it up, I will tell you something. In India, there is a lot of demand for use of commercial CFD softwares. Earlier, there was a demand even for actually becoming a CFD producer. I mean, CFD code producers or CFD code writers. But now the code writers are many, and therefore there is lot of industry applications are available. If you are able to handle any one particular commercial software properly and then give the solution to industry, that becomes a very good the work. And when I was working with MS Ramaiah School of Advanced Studies, I was more involved in this type of work where we integrated or we took the project works from a university and then we gave it back as a solutions to it. Even today, most of the industries are looking for these types of solutions. If the students are learning, my suggestion is please learn physics, maths, number one. Number two, immediately switch over to commercial softwares. And using the commercial software, when you get the result out, as I was telling today, the result should be properly, analyzed in the light of physics. If you are not able to analyze, I think you are going to lose the edge of it. So this is the total thing which I just wanted to say. It's really a great effort by the organizers to, within 1 week, you could, gather so many international speakers and also the students as well as faculty. And my congratulations to once again. That completes my talk for today's, valedictory function. Thank you very much for inviting me again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now, Dr. Manjunath, head of the Department of Civil Engineering, will give the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon. I take this opportunity to give the vote of thanks to all those who participated as well as conducted. First of all, I thank today's chief guest, Dr. Sridhar SN, Director School of Engineering, Amity University, for his fantastic presentation or the lecture that he has given. And I would definitely appreciate and thank the management and principal of our institute for having supported us in all the ways for conducting this FDP. And I thank Director of CMTI Naga Hanumaya for his association with our institute and supporting this FDP. And I also thank all the speakers who are highly knowledgeable and gave the best presentation on this occasion. And I thank Mr. Mahadev Swami, head of mechanical engineering, and also Professor Sripad Markandeya of mechanical department, head of mechanical department, for conducting and organizing this one. And I finally thank all the participants who are of India or from abroad, who could able to make this FDP successful. I thank each and everyone finally. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. And
So thank you very much, sir. So thank you. Namaskara. Thank you, sir.
Video on.